They said I'd never amount to anything, that I was just a waitress, someone to refill their drinks and keep quiet. They laughed behind my back, rolled their eyes at my dreams, and told me I'd always be beneath them. But I stayed silent, and I built something powerful. Now, I own the restaurant they mocked me in. I fired the cousin who humiliated me in front of everyone, and I made $8 million, 0 cents doing it. This is the story of how I turned every insult into a weapon and every doubt into my drive. Because before we start, tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Hit that like button if you've ever felt overlooked. And don't forget to subscribe because sometimes the best revenge is quiet success. My name is Emily. I'm 31 years old, and this is the story of how my family told me I'd never be more than a waitress. So I bought the restaurant, fired my own cousin, and turned their mockery into an $8 million, 0 cents empire. I didn't grow up poor, but I grew up invisible. In our family, success had a very specific look: doctor, lawyer, engineer, someone they could brag about at dinner parties. I was none of those things. I liked food, I liked people, and I liked making things beautiful. So at 22, I got a job waiting tables at a cozy little bistro downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. I'd come home smelling like garlic and herbs, my feet aching, and still, I felt more alive than I ever had. My parents weren't impressed. My mother would say, "You'll never build a future carrying plates, Emily." My father called it a phase. My cousins, all working cushy jobs in tech and finance, loved to remind me how cute it was that I played restaurant. At family gatherings, they'd make jokes like, "Hey, Em, you taking orders tonight too? Or make sure to refill my wine." It stung, but I never let it show. What they didn't see was that while they were busy mocking me, I was watching everything. I paid attention to the kitchen, the suppliers, the margins, the way customers reacted to different dishes. I listened to the chef talk about sourcing ingredients. I watched the owner stress over payroll. And slowly I started to understand the business from the inside out. What my family didn't realize was that I wasn't just serving, I was studying. And every hour I worked, every insult I swallowed was stacking up inside me like silent fuel, because someday I swore I was going to own more than just their respect. I was going to own the building they laughed in. It was Thanksgiving dinner when the fuse finally blew. The entire family was gathered at Aunt Linda's, and like every year, I was the one helping in the kitchen while everyone else sipped wine and swapped stories about promotions, bonuses, and business trips. I tried to stay quiet, but then Hannah strutted in late, wearing a designer coat and carrying a $1,200, 0 cents purse like it was a trophy. She kissed everyone hello, saw me peeling potatoes, and smirked. "Still playing waitress, Em," she said with a giggle. The room laughed. I laughed too, but something cracked inside me. Later that night, I excused myself to the bathroom, but I didn't cry. I looked in the mirror and thought, they think I'm nothing. They think I'll never leave this apron behind. That night, I opened my journal again, the one I'd been filling with ideas for the past 3 years. I flipped to the back where I had written Operation Takeover in bold black ink. I knew it was time. The owners of Willow's were kind people, but they were tired. The pandemic had drained their savings, and business wasn't what it used to be. I'd overheard one of them, Nancy, saying they were considering selling. I waited for the right moment. When it came, I offered to buy the place. Not with money I didn't have, but with a plan, a pitch deck, and the small savings I'd been squirreling away over the years. I also found a local investor who believed in me. After 2 months of meetings, paperwork, and negotiations, it was mine. I didn't tell a soul in my family. Instead, I quietly took over operations, redesigned the menu, added new branding, revamped the website, and created an Instagram strategy. I hired 2 young chefs who brought energy and flair, and I treated every staff member like gold. Business started to shift, the locals noticed, reviews poured in. Then, one day, a food blogger came in, just by chance, and her viral post changed everything. That was the beginning of the empire they never saw coming. The restaurant was reborn, and I was finally at the helm of something that felt mine. We started getting booked out every weekend. The reviews on Yelp and Google skyrocketed. People were tagging us in their photos. Influencers were asking for collabs, and we were catering events I used to only dream about attending. But through all of it, I stayed quiet. I didn't change my clothes or flaunt a title. I still wore my apron, still cleaned tables, still kept my head down until the day my cousin Hannah came in for dinner. She didn't recognize me at first. It was a Friday night and the place was packed. She and her fiance had made a reservation under his name, so I didn't catch it on the books. I watched them laugh, sip wine, and post selfies under our custom neon sign that read "Built from Scratch." The same cousin who once said I'd end up barefoot, broken, bitter in that same kitchen. At the end of their meal, Hannah asked for the manager. She was upset about the truffle fries not being crispy enough. I walked over, keeping my tone calm. "I'll take care of it personally," I said with a polite smile. She blinked, tilted her head, and gasped. "Emily?" And then, right in front of her, our hostess came up and asked, "Emily, we just got a call from Forbes Local about the interview. Do you want me to confirm?" The look on Hannah's face? Priceless. She stammered, asked what I was doing there, and I just smiled. "Oh, I own the place," I said. "But I'm still the waitress, too." She turned red. Her fiancé looked between us, clearly confused. "She's your cousin?" he asked. "You said your cousin worked here." Hannah went pale. "She used to," she mumbled. But I wasn't done, not even close. Because Hannah didn't just mock me over the years, she had taken things from me. Job opportunities, credit for ideas, even spread rumors about me being unstable to keep me out of family conversations. And soon she'd realize just how much I remembered every word she ever said. After that dinner, word spread faster than I could have imagined. Hannah's humiliation became a quiet legend in our family circles. I didn't have to say a thing. Everyone already knew. Some tried to reach out with awkward congratulations, acting like they'd always believed in me. Others, like Aunt Karen, doubled down on passive-aggressive comments like, "It's nice that you finally settled into something stable." I smiled and nodded, letting their discomfort simmer. I didn't need to clap back. My success was loud enough. What mattered more was the restaurant, the team I built, the culture we created. I hired former servers from my old jobs, people who had been overlooked, underestimated, or mistreated. I paid them better, gave them real benefits, even profit sharing. And in return, they gave me their loyalty, their passion, and their best ideas. It wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was a movement, a place built by underdogs for underdogs. I wanted Then one afternoon, while reviewing the catering bookings, my GM came into the office looking uncomfortable. "Emily," she said, "you're not going to like this. Hannah just applied for the events manager position. She used a fake last name, but I recognized her." I stared at the screen. Her resume was a joke, exaggerated titles, half-truths, and a glowing reference from a business that had already shut down. My blood boiled. It wasn't just the audacity, it was the idea that she thought I would fall for it, that she still saw me as that naive, forgettable cousin in an apron. I didn't say anything immediately. I just sat with it, let the old anger burn through me, not to destroy, but to remind. Remind me who I was, who I'd become, and who I would never let walk over me again. I called her in for an interview the next day. She walked in wearing a blazer too expensive for her current income. She still didn't recognize me right away, but when I extended my hand and said, "Thanks for coming in, Hannah," the blood drained from her face. She sat stiffly. I let the silence stretch until she mumbled, "So, this is your place?" I leaned back, smiled, "Yes. And I reviewed your resume. Very creative." She tried to laugh it off, saying she was just exploring new paths. I nodded. "That's great, but you won't be working here." She looked stunned. "Is this personal?" she asked. I paused. "No, this is professional. You lied on your application. That's enough." But before she could stand up, I added, "Also, you once said I'd never be more than a waitress. So I figured I'd be the one to tell you I'm not hiring you to work in my restaurant, especially not when I own the building, the franchise, and the rights to the brand you just tried to infiltrate." She left without another word, and I finally felt the weight lift. Not because I'd gotten revenge, but because I had stood in the same spot they once laughed at me from, and I didn't feel small anymore. A month after that awkward interview with Hannah, I thought things would settle down, but I underestimated how bitter people can get when you rewrite the narrative they built around you. She didn't just leave quietly. She started talking, spreading rumors, twisting the story. Suddenly, I was cruel, vindictive, and using money to humiliate family. I heard that Aunt Karen called me a traitor to her roots. That one made me laugh. My roots? The same roots they tried to bury me under? At first, I wanted to ignore it all, let success speak, but then my staff started asking questions. They were loyal to me, but they were confused, especially the younger ones who looked up to me. I could see it in their eyes. Did she really fire a family member just to get even? So I held a team meeting. Nothing fancy, just honest. I didn't fire Hannah out of spite, I told them. I rejected her application because she lied. And because this restaurant, what we're building is about honesty, growth, and respect. She never respected me when I was wearing this apron, I said, lifting it from the back hook. And she didn't respect any of you when she tried to sneak in under a fake name. The room went quiet, and then one of my line cooks, Rosa, clapped. Then the others joined. I wasn't trying to create a moment, but it became one. After that day, something changed. We weren't just coworkers. We were a team with a shared story, a shared climb. Around that same time, something else happened. A woman named Tracy walked into the restaurant and asked to speak with me. She was from a well-known investment group that specialized in scaling independent hospitality brands. She'd heard about our business through press coverage, social media, and even whispers from the local chamber of commerce. "We've been watching you," she said. "What you're doing here, it's scalable, and we'd like to help." I didn't jump at the offer. I took weeks to think. I consulted lawyers, accountants, mentors, but ultimately I said yes. Not because I needed their validation, but because I saw the bigger vision. I didn't just want one restaurant. I wanted 10, then 50, 100. Places where people like me, people who had been dismissed, could find dignity in their work. And so the expansion began. Anna, she faded from view. I heard she bounced between jobs, tried to start a catering business that never took off. I don't say that with glee, just truth. She never evolved, never learned, and while she stayed bitter, I stayed busy. And that's when it happened. Forbes featured me in a Women to Watch article. The headline read, "From Waitress to Empire Builder, Emily's $8 million, 0 cents climb." My phone exploded. Friends, colleagues, even some family. Suddenly everyone wanted to catch up, even Aunt Karen. But I wasn't playing their game anymore. When I saw that article, I didn't think of them. I thought of 19-year-old me, exhausted after a double shift, walking home in the rain, wondering if I'd ever be more than the punchline at family dinners. I thought of her, and I smiled because I made it, not just in money, but in meaning. And I was just getting started. The article changed everything. Suddenly, I wasn't just a neighborhood success story. I was a woman being profiled on podcasts, invited to panels, and asked to mentor others. I got emails from young women across the country. "My aunt says I'll never make it either," one message read. "Your story gives me hope." I printed it out and pinned it in the back office because that's why I kept going. Not to prove my family wrong anymore, but to remind the ones like me that they could rewrite their story too. Meanwhile, the restaurant continued thriving. I launched a training program for young people aging out of the foster system. We taught them kitchen skills, customer service, and even basic business literacy. Every Friday, we hosted what we called shift stories, where one staff member would share something they'd overcome. Some of the stories broke us, others inspired us, but each one brought us closer. One night after closing, I stood alone in the dining room. The lights were dim, the chairs stacked, the air thick with the smell of lemon cleaner and garlic. And I just breathed. I thought about everything it had taken to get here. Every humiliation, every slammed door, every relative who rolled their eyes when I said, I had dreams beyond taking orders and bussing tables. And then the phone rang. It was my mother. But we hadn't spoken in nearly 3 years. She'd always stayed neutral, never cruel, but never supportive. "I just don't want you to be disappointed," she used to say. But this time her voice sounded different, softer, slower. "I read the article," she said. "I'm proud of you, Emily." I sat down right there on the floor. "I didn't believe in you the way I should have," she continued. "And I know I wasn't the worst, but I also wasn't your anchor. I see that now." For the first time in a long time, I let myself cry, not out of grief or anger, but release. That phone call was a turning point, not because I needed her validation anymore, but because healing had begun, not just in me, but in the space between us. His family still didn't change overnight. Some members doubled down on their narrative, others stayed quiet, uncomfortable in the face of my success. But my mother, she showed up. She came to the restaurant one afternoon, asked for a table in the corner, and watched me work. She didn't make a scene, she just watched. And when I came over, she stood up and hugged me. I get it now, she whispered. I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but that moment mattered. Because sometimes success isn't just about what you build, it's about what you rebuild. Relationships, belief, trust. And I was finally starting to rebuild mine. The first franchise deal came in quietly, an email from a woman named Janet who ran a small cafe in Vermont. She'd read about me online and said, "You've built something that feels like home. I want that in my town." I almost ignored it, thinking it was spam. But I replied, and a week later, I was flying to Burlington with a stack of documents and a heart full of nerves. The deal went through. Then another, then another. Within 18 months, we had 6 locations, all woman led, all built with the same heart as the original. I didn't just sell food, I sold belief. The belief that someone from the margins could lead, innovate, and thrive. Of course, the attention brought the family back around again. Amanda, yes, that cousin, showed up one day pretending like nothing ever happened. She sauntered in wearing designer sunglasses and said, "I thought maybe we could talk. I've been thinking about coming back to the business." I didn't even flinch. I just smiled and said, "You had your chance, Amanda. You mocked my ambition, laughed at my ideas, and sabotaged me every step of the way. This isn't just a restaurant anymore, it's a legacy, and there's no seat for betrayal at this table." She called me bitter. I called her a cab. The day she left, I hosted a staff celebration, not because of her, but because we had just hit $8 million 0 cents in total revenue across all locations. 8 million. From a girl they said would never amount to more than late night shifts and grease stained aprons. At the party, we played karaoke, handed out bonuses, and toasted to the future. And as I stood there, surrounded by people who had once been just like me, underestimated, overlooked, underpaid, I realized something. I wasn't driven by revenge anymore, and I was driven by purpose. Because while revenge might light the fire, purpose keeps it burning. And I wasn't done yet. A few weeks after the franchise milestone, I got invited to speak at a women's entrepreneurship conference in New York. At first, I hesitated. Public speaking wasn't my thing, and the idea of standing in front of hundreds of people terrified me. But then I remembered all the times I'd been told to stay quiet, to stay small. And I said, yes. The room was packed. I stood behind the podium, hands shaking, voice tight. But I told my story, from the waitress nobody believed in to the woman who owned a multi-million-dollar brand. I shared the pain, the betrayal, the loneliness, and the grit. The applause was thunderous. But the real reward came afterward when a young girl approached me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "You just gave me permission to dream again." That moment changed everything. I started getting requests, interviews, podcasts, panels. My face was suddenly on magazine covers. The girl they said would amount to nothing became someone others looked up to. And through it all, I never forgot who I was. I still swept the floor in my original restaurant. I still knew every line on the menu by heart. I still remembered every insult they threw at me and used it as fuel. And then came the offer. A large investment firm reached out. They wanted to acquire a 40% stake in my brand. The number on the paper made me laugh out loud. It was more money than I ever imagined earning in a lifetime. But I wasn't ready to give up control. Not yet. I countered. We negotiated for weeks. In the end, they agreed to a minority partnership that kept my vision intact and gave us room to expand nationwide. I signed the deal in my office above the original restaurant, the same place where I once cried behind the fryer, wondering if I'd ever escape that kitchen. That night, I closed the shop early. No cameras, no headlines, just me, a glass of wine, and the hum of the appliances. I stood in the quiet and let it all wash over me. The girl who used to take out the trash, now signing 7-figure contracts. The waitress they mocked, now sitting at the head of the table. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I walked into the restaurant that morning and took a slow, quiet moment before unlocking the doors. It had been nearly 6 years since I first stepped behind that counter, wearing a faded apron, dodging rude customers, and swallowing the sting of every snide remark from family who thought they were better than me. And now, I own this place. I own the brand, I own my story, and nobody could take that from me. The $8 million 0 cents milestone had been surpassed. I'd opened 10 new locations across 3 states, created over 150 jobs, and launched a culinary scholarship program in my name. But what meant more than the numbers was the legacy I was building, one not rooted in revenge, but in reclaiming worth, rewriting history, redefining what success looks like when you come from nothing, assessing who knew. A few days later, my cousin Rachel came by. She didn't recognize me at first. I was dressed in jeans and a hoodie, clipboard in hand, checking freezer logs. When she finally did a double take, the color drained from her face. She looked smaller than I remembered, more uncertain. But I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. "Hey," she said quietly, "I heard what you've built. I'm sorry for how I treated you." I nodded. "Thanks, I appreciate that." She looked at the sign above the entrance, the one with my name on it. Her mouth opened, maybe to say something more, but she just nodded once and walked away. That was enough for me. I didn't build this to prove them wrong. I built it because I finally believed I was right about myself. And if you're watching this right now, maybe someone has told you you're not good enough, that you're just to insert your job, that your dreams are silly. I want you to hear me. They don't get to decide that. You do. And it doesn't matter where you start. It matters how far you're willing to go for yourself. So if this story hit home, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who needs to remember that being underestimated is a secret weapon. Thank you for watching, and remember, your story is still being written. Make it one they'll never forget.